This is Entrepreneur Authorities. Whether you're building your brand, scaling your startup, or getting started, get ready to be inspired, empowered, and equipped to take your next big leap. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and I'm back today with Charles Sims. You know him as the Hurricane CTO, but he's also the founder of SkaFld Studio and the mind behind what he calls SkaFld Anywhere, a methodology built on one simple truth. About 80% of every business is repeatable. Today, we're going to talk about how SkaFld helped turn a single pickleball location into a franchise-ready operation and how they guided school boards through AI adoption with clarity and trust. If you think frameworks only work in one industry, this episode will change how you look at growth, scale, and execution. Charles Sims, welcome back. How are you, my friend?
Doing very well, Joe. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you for asking. And so it's funny, we've had a couple of conversations, and I felt like I will be honest, felt like a bit of an idiot because, we talked about your Hurricane CTO background, and then you talk about starting SkaFld Studios, and you explained to me that it was this company that essentially builds infrastructure for startups. And I said something like, oh, so you're like the scaffolding of a startup. And you're like, yeah, idiot. That's where the name comes from. Is it as obvious to other people outside of me of what SkaFld is all about?
Well, luckily we took the age-old VC trick of taking all the vowels out of the word, so no one actually knows that it's scaffold, and they don't even think scaffolding. It's definitely spelled incorrectly. But as soon as that clicks, it's the exact same. Aha! Oh, and they kind of have like that dad joke where they laugh at themselves, like, oh, that's why it's called SkaFld. But yeah, it's definitely something that we talk about a lot of. 80% of all these businesses, 80% of all these engagements, 80% of whether it's helping out NGOs, helping out a new initiative at one of the school districts, or starting up a VC, or even doing a corporate innovation initiative, it's the same 80% of getting it in the getting the scaffolding, getting the blueprint, and then deploying it.
Okay, cool. All right, so I guess I'm not the only person that's happened to. All right, so I don't feel as bad anymore, Charles. Thank you for being so kind to me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Next business I have, I'll have to keep a couple more vowels in that.
Yes, of course. And so this idea of SkaFld, and people know your background, obviously Hurricane CTO, you're with the legit resume. But when did you realize that SkaFld was not just obviously for tech startups? Because I think that's one of the things, you come with a negative word of baggage, but you come with this experience of being the tech guy. When did you realize, oh, you mean like people outside of Silicon Valley can use SkaFld? What an ingenious idea.
Well, so my my career kind of started actually out in business and entrepreneurship. My undergrad was in entrepreneurship and project management. I didn't really have any true tech background until I broke into the LA management scene within technology, and then still approach it from the business mindset. I approach everything as if it's a conversation with a CEO, a CFO, or COO who don't have that technical background. And by doing that, that's where a lot of my success came from, is being able to have those non-technical conversations about technical topics, but in a business framework. So now, as we back into what we've been doing with SkaFld, yes, we have great talent on the team. My background from my time with the Clippers or UTA, that is very, very hardy, technical, really meaty in that operational space, but it always came from the lens of business. And so now I've been loving the ability to stretch our wings into what I was born into. My mother was an entrepreneur. My first couple of businesses that I had were all entrepreneur. Like I started a paintball business when I figured out that you could get wholesale paintballs for all you and your friends and be able to get the wholesale prices, or the car audio business in college. But like that entrepreneurship was always at the core of what I loved and what I just kind of clicked for me coming from growing up. And so to me, it's always been there. It's just now showing that that side, and the other professionals we have and partners we have in the group that are solely in finance, solely in operations, and then adding the lens of technology, since it's more of a multiplier than it is the core piece.
Excellent. So tell me about that aha moment when you thought, oh, SkaFld works everywhere. Like, I know you've had this business background, but obviously people immediately think, oh, for a tech infrastructure, it must be a tech company. Was there that moment, or was it like even early on when you started SkaFld where you're like, This is not going to be confined to the world of technology.
As we first deployed SkaFld OS, which was like the, I guess, operating system that we built, the framework that we built to both service our clients as well as productize our service offerings, I started realizing how many of the things that we were really starting to automate, the things that we were starting to create these 80% blueprints for anybody. They work much more than just in your startup world. We were partnering with the local, the school district when they were just asking for some advice around AI, and we ran it through the framework, and all of a sudden it's starting to push out some really interesting blueprints to be able to bring in AI innovation, even though it's more focused on the initiative than it is the technology or anything like that. So like the aha moment came from this iterating in very weird projects, getting pulled into a project that we didn't expect before, and then realizing everything that we had built in the framework up until that point works way beyond just technical, way beyond just the infrastructure or the technical vision of some of these projects.
And you mentioned a couple times the 80% versus 20%. Just for folks not familiar, give us a little context as to where that insight came from in the first place.
Well, I mean, we all know the 80/20 principle. And what I've realized over the past 3 years in VC is every time I'm having a conversation with a founder who just doesn't know how to get to the next stage, with an investment group who's just trying to figure out how to make this portfolio company work, or as we've seen more recently, is a lot of these other initiatives. The hard part is getting over that hump, and the hump is that 80%, and the 80% of the problems are very similar no matter what domain it's in. But as we started to see, no matter whether it was who is or what's the product market fit for this product, who are the investment group that we want to target, and how do we pitch them, the constituents of the local government, and how to excite them about this initiative, all of those things are the same kind of process. And so we created this concept of like the universal data room. So even though we're not actually pitching like diligence, and we're pitching what the startup is outside of just startups, we are taking that same concept of like understanding who the audience, who the market is, doing market intelligence on any sort of project, any sort of initiative, or just advisory work itself. So that's been the big pivot outside of tech that we've been able to really lean on.
And so, we've talked in past episodes about like the hurricane TTO of like, you're always going into rooms that are broken and fixing things. So bringing that sort of analogy to what you're doing today, what usually breaks first when leaders try to scale without systemizing the basics?
Humans are very similar to the problems we hear about AI is context. So it's very hard to have all the context. You just have your say stakeholders that have one piece of the puzzle, but they don't have the entire puzzle. And as you start to move things around, sometimes you're not able to properly communicate, get people on board, and then pieces of the puzzle start failing because somebody is pulling back, or they're not bought in. And yes, you can steamroll that, but it's very hard the larger of an organization you go. It's why I love startups. Why I love small business. Even I can make so much more innovation progress with a mom and pop carpet shop than I could with IBM, because it's 3 people that you just need to convince. But the more people and more voices you add onto that, you need better context, better empathy for where they are, why they're pushing back. And then that is what is going to be your biggest blocker as you move forward.
So you are a bit of a therapist when it comes to working with some of these folks. So unlicensed, obviously, but why do smart people resist standardization even when growth depends on it?
Whew. So our
Take a deep breath. Go ahead.
our values aren't usually as somebody that's part of an organization, our values aren't necessarily always aligned with everybody else's. And so your CEO might have a vision, and these are the values and things that they need to be accomplishing. But your CFO is going to have different values. They're going to have different incentives. They're going to have different things that they need to do. And they know their context. They know what their position is. And so when you talk about innovation, there's a lot of shiny ball syndrome that we've all been through with our careers. And that leads to kind of hesitance. So if you don't have full confidence of your team, they're going to go, oh, this is just another shiny ball. and they pull back. And I think that's why, going back to the analogy of a small business, is so much easier to move and innovate and pull into this process than a large business, because it's like turning or turning a battleship in a bathtub. It's impossible when you have to convince so many people. Historically, it's all been about your voice. How big can you leverage your voice? So if you're able to get on the radio, you're able to get on TV, you have a much larger voice, where these days you can communicate very, very broadly with very little effort and little, I guess, political stake to be able to get out. But all of us know how difficult or how frustrating it is just to get a Slack message that's telling us all the brand new this, that, and the other, and there's no like human component to it. And that's where a lot of these initiatives actually kind of lack, is they don't have a human component. They don't have somebody with empathy who understands this isn't going to be easy, but we're not just going to be authoritarian and shove this down everybody's throat. We are going to let it be part of the culture, let it be our innovative side.
And on the subject of the human side, perfectionism is a major problem. And, I'm sure it's been uttered many a time at startups, perfect is the enemy of good. But can you share an example without naming names of where have you seen like perfection slow down the momentum? Because again, you get all these people like, okay, cool, we're not going to do it unless it's completely perfect and no bugs in it. Give me an example how, like, when you saw things that were moving pretty well, when all of a sudden someone said like, nope, if it's not perfect, we're not moving a single move.
So one of the things I like to talk about is the royal we in organizations. We have this royal we that happens a lot, where you're in a leadership meeting and you hear about, oh, we should do this, or we should think about that. We should try to figure that thing out. But it's not actually taking ownership. It's just being able to tell your voice. And what you'll see with organizations that have these more fiefdoms is there's a lot of those royal we's of everybody giving their opinion on how it could be better. We can't move forward because of X, Y, and Z. And they're getting into a no mentality. That one of the most recent organizations that we're working with was actually an indoor venue that had a lot of passionate people that were working on it, but they were butting heads with one another. They were continuously, because something would go wrong and everybody would blow up, and they would want to go through all of the post-mortem. How do we make sure this never happens again? And 80% of these things were all edge cases. It's like, yeah, you guys are a brand new business. You're figuring it out. You have to give some space to failure, and your team has to know that you have their back. Whether or not they make the right decision or wrong decision, it's still a good learning situation, and not a place where everybody's coming into those leadership meetings saying no, because I want to make sure that I have it on the record that I said no, or I gave my opinion, and that I can always go back to it. Versus what I like to say is, let's dream with me, come with me and dream with me. So try to help me, instead of shutting down my opinion, yes, and with me, you try to figure out how to make it work. And then if we both come to the conclusion that this isn't working, that's great. That is the most progress we could make. But just shutting me down, or just shutting your fellow leaders down, creates this constriction of faith, constriction of innovation, because everybody gets very guarded to make sure that they are not the one who gets yelled at.
That's great. Good stuff. Thanks for sharing that one. And so a week ago, I gave you a call to confirm we were chatting today, and you were inside an indoor pickleball place, which if people aren't familiar, they're sprouting up all over the place. This one in particular was called Cali Smash, but it turned out you weren't there to play pickleball. You're working with them. First, tell us about how that started in the first place.
So this one started because I live in El Segundo, California. My family's here. My daughter goes to school here, and I love this town. I love it. I love the makeup of it. I sit on the El Segundo Economic Development Committee that really focuses on bringing big businesses here, small businesses, bringing startups, bringing capital, as well as keeping the business that we have here in this rich ecosystem. We have one of the largest deep tech ecosystems in the entire world. We have the Air Force or Space Force base here. We have Mattel, Boeing, Northrop. We have this long, really strong ecosystem business. So I love it. And one of the reasons why I love it is the previous mayor and the government, who I had talked about and interacted with on a number of startups, would always introduce me to whoever the new group is that's coming into town and needs some help, because our group was very good at being able to, if you have a vision, if you have an idea, let's just jam with it. There's not going to be any sort of expectation. Like, if it's for the community, we'll do it. And so I was introduced to one of the founders at Cali Smash 2 years ago, before they did any construction, anything whatsoever. And it was this gentleman who had an amazing vision, a beautiful design, a great understanding of like the space and how to make it make it a really cornerstone place here in El Segundo. But it didn't necessarily have all the business dynamics or the investment dynamics that I'm used to. And so helping him model out his investment thesis, help him understand the true market place here in El Segundo, the opportunities, the partners, and all that, really got him into a place where when he went to start finding investors, he had a solid pitch, had a solid data room, had solid diligence, and all that. But we didn't talk after. I kind of let him go on his way. And about a year and a half later, he ended up at one of the events we had for our STEM Advantage scholars with one of the other groups I'm a part of. And he and his wife came to the dinner. We started talking. He reminded me about Cali Smash. I was like, oh, I got to come by. And all of a sudden, it was back to, oh man, this is a huge opportunity for El Segundo. It's a huge, really interesting venue. It's a great space for both our children that are coming up, as well as the other residents. They needed a couple pieces around the operational, because again, every other project that they had done in the past were these amazing real estate projects, but they were handing the keys over after the build is done. Where this is one of the first ones that they're operating the entire thing as well. And that's, again, our bread and butter, where it really comes into the ability to rapidly set up the team, get them under standards, get that 80% of that blueprint running and laid out. And now we've been with them for, I think, almost 2 months, and different parts of my team who had absolutely no pickleball experience, no venue experience, have leaned in because they love it. The people are extraordinarily genuine. It's a fun organization to be partnered with, and we just want to keep them going for the sake of what El Segundo is. But also, it was a great testament to applying the SkaFld way, the SkaFld methodology, into a non-technical, not a real traditional startup altogether.
That's cool. And a lot of folks in your space talk about what's repeatable. And I'm curious, when you looked under the hood there, if you could look under the hood of a pickleball place, but when you looked in the operations, right? What did you notice either right away or after some further due diligence? You're like, oh, that's repeatable. You can do that.
Yeah, so I think a lot of as we took this as one of our case studies, a lot of the initial build and the things that they went through, because it was a old industrial warehouse, so they did the rezoning. They brought it up to code for commercial, for F&B. They have a full kitchen and bar. All of those things that they went through, the repeatability is being able to do it faster and much cheaper. So being able to not cut corners, be able to optimize the costs and understand, not learning the entire process with the government, not learning the entire process with your real estate agents and negotiating with the landlords and all that. So that's one big opportunity. And the other one is what is actually required for a space like this, when in reality, yes, it's 9 indoor pickleball courts, but it's just a big venue. It's a truly amazing and beautiful space, but it's more or less a big venue to do anything that you want with, and really leaning into, okay, it doesn't need to be so restricted that you can only play pickleball here. You need to be able to have that more agnostic concept and be able to do other interesting stuff, but have it modular, so it is what it's supposed to be. But the pickleball nets can be pulled up. You can do a massive concert there. We had the State of the City for El Segundo there, and a lot of those learnings are definitely the repeatability that you can take anywhere else. Like, I think one of the awesome things that you have with this franchise concept versus, say, a Topgolf, which it was modeled after. Topgolf can kind of only be that. They have bays. That's all you can do. They will have some event space, but it's not really something where you can have a full buyout where you have a disco was it disco raver parties,
Yeah.
glow in the dark, and the silent discos and all that. Like it's really cool that you can do many different things. And if you're going to repeat it, you want to keep that modularity, that moldability.
That's so cool. And I just out of curiosity, because when you go in with bring in the tech side of SkaFld, was there something where you were working with them where you were like, I want to intentionally leave that alone because what they're doing there, that works. They don't not that they don't need SkaFld for this or they don't need technology for this, but like the human side of this is good. Leave that as is, and we work around it.
Yeah, so a lot of when I was first convincing our team, telling our team that this is one of the things that I was passionate for us to engage with, was because the people there were very genuine. You go there, you have smiles. Everybody is really fighting for one another. They're bought into the like overall culture and cause. So that I didn't want to mess with. That I didn't want to get into the shiny ball syndrome and say, hey, we're changing all the systems. Hey, we're doing this, that, and the other, because they've had whiplash for the past, say, year of getting of starting this business. Of everybody has an opinion, they all want to do their own thing, but unifying a lot of the good, consolidating the things that make sense with I'll go back to it with context of these folks have been through it, they've been figuring it out. So let them give some of their insights, but don't necessarily leave that as a source of truth. That's the end all be all, because they don't necessarily always have the context as well. So like taking all those inputs and then unifying and strategizing on that standardization.
Nice. And all of that is required with a lot of systems. And, you come from the side of like building these systems. When you're working with non like startup-ish companies like Cali Smash, how do you explain modular systems where they're like, I don't know what that means, man. Can you just tell me in English what the heck a modular system is? Is that like something, is that IKEA furniture? What is a modular system? Tell me about how you break through when you're talking about these modular systems that are a big part of what SkaFld does.
So one of the systems design methodology and I guess theory that I've always held really close to my heart when it came to technology was keeping it as simple as possible until it needs to be more complicated, because the more that you complicate something, the more difficult it is. Now that we have AI and what we've been doing with SkaFld in our framework, it's all about taking really complex things and continuously decomposing them into as close to a yes no answer. So you have all these different parts. Now when you talk about like a startup and you're trying to tell them what like modular systems thinking is, it's trying to take the most complex thing that is an organization as a whole and breaking into what are the four revenue components. We like for the pickleball, you have your court rentals, you have your retail, you have your F&B, and then you have your events. Now break those into it. So F&B, that's going to be your kitchen and your bar. Now break those into like, so you keep kind of decomposing them so you have all of the concepts and components that go into the bigger picture. And then you find what is the most optimal way to deploy that. What is the most optimal way to deploy a birthday party? Well, instead of doing a custom event every single time, no, here's how we do a birthday party for this many people for this type of thing. Here's the food menu, here's the bar menu, here's the minimums, and you keep in a similar way to like when we're talking about franchising, you're trying to create the formulas for as many of these hard decisions so you don't get the decision fatigue and you don't have these non-standard ways to apply that logic across the business. You want to have it fairly similar to the logic that you're making the decision on how much to charge for a court rental should be lined up with how much you charge for an event, and it comes down to COGS and as well as the margin that the market will allow. Keep applying those different pieces across everything, and that way you have that really complex situation broken down into a very simple answer. And it's easier to then translate between domains, between your chef and your head of events and your head of retail. You're all kind of saying the same thing.
So after working with these folks who were, obviously not tech people, they were just, they had this idea for putting a pickleball court that was going to be a place for family gatherings for people that are into pickleball. After all is said and done, the SkaFld model is in place. What surprised the owners once everything was up and running? Was there something that stood out to them where like, oh, that's pretty good. I didn't realize that was going to help.
I think the more as standardization started really taking hold, the more that everybody felt that they knew what the playbook was, they knew what the kind of base set of requirements were. The hospitality, the giving guests a very unique experience, being able to really engage with guests, it grew exponentially, because now all of a sudden you have these folks who aren't trying to figure out or say, oh, that's not my job, let me just that guy over there, that's who you need to talk to. They know what the top 10 questions that they're going to get asked, and now they believe in it because they don't have to, it's not going through a ton of training. It's just thinking through the problems, thinking through the answers with the same framework, with the same formulas. And so all of a sudden, I think the owners were very excited to see how much the customers saw it too. They saw it, they saw it shifting from like everybody was kind of learning maybe 4 or 5 months ago to now it's everybody in there is an expert.
And, I'm just wondering because, all right, so you do this with Cali Smash, but were unfamiliar with how SkaFld works, right? So how do you help leaders trust the systems you're bringing in without them feeling that like they're being replaced? Like you said, that dude was working on Cali Smash for like over a year, and then here you come. Not that you're ripping down things and redoing things, but like you're bringing in things that might be intimidating to them to be like, oh, I don't feel as important anymore because now there's a system in place that's going to take care of a lot of the decisions I would normally have to worry about. Tell me about that nuance and that sort of gray area when it comes to putting systems in place with leaders who might feel threatened by it.
So it's a great question. And it's something that I ran into a lot in regular IT and technology. It's very scary to have somebody come in and make changes to your baby, but the thing that we like to joke about is like it's an ugly baby. So you're gonna protect your ugly baby no matter what, but you're gonna still understand it's an ugly baby. And more often than not, when you actually have that first conversation and you're doing it with empathy and understanding, like, hey, I get it. We had to get hit. The reason we're here is because we had to. We had to get here. We had to do whatever it took to get here. So that's not what I'm questioning. I'm not questioning, wow, who did this? It's not an audit. We're not going through your taxes to figure out why did you screw up or why did you do this. We're actually just trying to say, you're exhausted. You're making so many decisions and you're barely able to be happy and excited at your job. Like, how do we take some of that pressure off, and how do we do it in a way across the entire organization, because you're not the only one that's running into this. And so with many of our organizations that we come in after they've already built the product, they've built the startup, they have a program going, whatever it may be, a lot of our first initial steps are around getting buy-in. So not selling, hey, here's the next shiny ball that we're going to implement and you better be okay with it or else. No, it actually is, let's listen, let's with that empathetic and active listening ability to actually get what they're talking about, get the frustrations that they have, and then translate them to the things that we are implementing. So there's a reason for implementation versus just pushing it to push.
One of the bedrocks behind what you've done over your career and what SkaFld is about relationship building as risk reduction. I think this is kind of like almost like common sense to real life. Like you're going to feel like you're taking less risks if you trust someone. Tell me about those steps of you talk about like, when you go in, like you have these really open-ended discussions with these founders and these leaders. How, outside of that initial like meet cute or that initial like first impression, how do you keep that trust building going through the process?
Oh, that's a good question. So that initial conversation has to be a conversation that is able to quickly show the entire audience, whoever's a part of that conversation, that we have expertise in many different things. We don't have expertise in their business yet. We are going to rapidly adopt and understand their business, but at that beginning, it's all about being open and vulnerable to, we don't have your answer today, but I guarantee you in 30 minutes, we're going to start by being able to give you what that is, and not have you tell us what are all your problems, and we'll fix all those problems. But no, just having a conversation of what the day-to-day is, and then leaning into the formulas, leaning into the blueprints and things that we've built many times over in these other organizations, and translating that. So even if it's with an organization in a industry that we've never touched before, we're still leading on those other implementations, those other advisory pieces, all the different work I've done in corporate previously, to lean on those to try to find what's the similar thing, what's the common thread, and then apply those like trusted solutions, those trusted blueprints. So that first step, where I like to call it the jam session. So that first 30 minutes is the jam session. We're just talking, and kind of you're trying to keep the excitement up, so they're not just completely crapping on everybody and everything, and everything's terrible. Like, you're trying to get that, what's that little piece of excitement of why you like this organization, or why you're bought into it. And then that passion, we can really drive towards like what the future blueprint looks like.
That's awesome. Good stuff. All right, so let's move from indoor pickleball to something that I was fascinated to find out is working with school boards and using AI. And for anyone who's ever been involved in school boards, man, I'm surprised there's not like a reality show of all the drama that's going on within school boards, and obviously externally from the from other forces. Tell me about how that all started and how AI plays into it.
Well, so look, AI is very technical, but at the end of the day, it's all about initiative management, it's stakeholder alignment, risk communication, and then a proper phased rollout. And to do all those things, whether or not you're deploying a brand new product, or you're getting buy-in at a school district to bring on AI. So even though the main initiative that we're talking about right now is a elementary school district that was looking to, how do they properly enable their entire curriculum, their ecosystem, the teachers, the administrators, the parents, the kids, with AI skills to bridge the workforce gap that we're all nervous about, to bridge the equality gap between male and female students that that's broadening the STEM issues that we've seen historically. But it's the same process. If we were doing how do we do food initiatives, or how would we implement PE curriculums, it's the same concepts, right? You're trying to figure out who are the stakeholders that we care about, how do we manage the communication in a forward thinking, not reactive way, how do we roll out in a phased and clearly drawn out and thought through space, but with the ability to make adjustments or make movements if something comes up. You're never going to think everything. This, even in this world, waterfall is no longer the deployment methodology we can. So that same methodology we use for venture, it works, and surprisingly, it works even better sometimes in these very archaic dinosaur where there's a ton of red tape, because you can move fast enough if you got the right buy-in, faster than the red tape can catch up to you.
That's great. And it's funny because, I've spoken to a lot of educators who've done it for a long time and held various roles. And there's always been this fear of the next thing. So like I'm speaking to educators who, like, when the calculator first became prevalent, they're like, oh my God, children are no longer going to learn math. And then, of course, obviously we saw that go through. And then computers came around. Oh no, they're going to cheat all the time because they have computers. And now this introduction of AI. What was that, I don't know, sell or conviction that was needed for school boards to sort of like allay those fears of like, hey, we can't be worried about this being the next calculator or the next computer. This is something that needs to be embraced on all levels of the spectrum when it comes to education, whether it comes to the board down all the way to the students.
It's as simple as they can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Like, no matter what, it's here. It's the students are using it. I mean, same with businesses. Your employees are using AI every single day, and either you buy in and really roll it out proper to protect yourself and protect your organization, your IP, and all that. Similar to students, is we can't just say no, you can't use AI no matter what. We want to figure out what is the proper way to roll it out that's safe for the students. What's the way to protect and empower our teachers, rather than, like we were mentioning before, don't don't just take their job away. You're not just saying, hey, the AI is going to be the thing that takes away all teachers. No, like teachers are a vastly overutilized resource in our world today that are some of the most amazing people that put so much time and effort into raising our children, and yet they don't have all the tools. And so how do we use AI to even empower them and not freak them out? Like, so a lot of the talks I've done recently are around de-scarifying it, and trying to give some bite-size pieces to folks that are terrified. They're terrified of whatever it may be. And for schools, that's the kids. They have no idea. They're just like they're in that mode of just sopping it up, using whatever they can because that's what they got. The parents terrified, administrators terrified, teachers terrified. So it's like that side that you want to really be able to empower them so they can be as excited, as curious as the kids are, because kids are using this stuff and doing some amazing things with it. But you still need nice, strong guardrails to make sure they're properly taken care of.
Nice. So there was something I read up on this was synthetic balance sheets. It sounds intimidating at the jump, I'll be honest with you, but tell me about the synthetic balance sheet.
Oh, I need to find a different term for it. But the synthetic balance sheet
No,
is
no, no, no.
is
Don't listen to me.
no. It's funny because it seems like such a meaty piece of vernacular, but in reality, what we talked about in SkaFld as we were building these frameworks, as we were working with these organizations, there's this idea of short-term cost to short-term value, and long-term cost to long-term value, but adding in this intangible cost, intangible value to both of those equations. And when you're trying to make a decision of whether or not you should do a project, whether or not you should deploy an initiative, whether or not it's something that's worth your while, you need to kind of buy into this concept of the synthetic balance sheet where you add those up, and you don't just stick with what the hard costs are, what the hard value is, and the dollars, but there's a lot more to it as far as your team's effort, your team's time, the amount of burnout that you're going to experience if you force this through, whatever, maybe what are the resources that are available. So as we've started to have in our standard vocabulary, we try to figure out every single podcast that we're doing, is it valuable to my short term and my long term, my intangible and my tangible costs? Like all those pieces come into it. And even into your personal life, we've talked about, when I'm talking to my mentees, think about working out. So working out historically doesn't have a nice, hearty, tangible value associated with it, but it is something that you would all agree is very valuable to your life. And so let's take a very easy equation of what's your salary? You make $200,000 a year, divided by 2,000, you're about $100 an hour billable to yourself. So every hour that you spend doing something else that's actually rewarding your life, being with your spouse, having dinner with your kids, or working out, those are dollars back into the bank. And that synthetic balance sheet applies the same way. It's that short-term cost, that short-term value. Maybe that networking event that you're going to actually is really valuable because you just now made 4 or 5 different connections that in 6 months are going to turn into sales or investments or whatever that may be. But it's trying to really balance those tangible and intangible costs and values across the long and short-term aspects.
And when you're working with these public sector leaders in school boards, as opposed to dealing with leaders in whether it's pickleball or like, a tech startup SMB or something like that, same fears, same
Yeah, so it's a great question. So we have part of our framework. One of the things we talk about is domain translation. So domain translation is that synthetic balance sheet still works. It's just they have different things that they care about. They have different things that they're valuing in the short and long term. So for a government, say an elected official that just got elected, they are really excited to get things that give them a name, give them something to really push or get additional capital for their funds and whatnot. But you have a senior official who's just about to retire. They're looking for as little problem and fracas and issues and pushback as they can, because they just want to go into the retirement as easy and smoothly as possible. It's very similar to, say, your academia, of what they value. So what do they want in the short term, what they want in the long term, and what actually matters. But in our aspect, you also want to understand there's what you say out loud and what you actually are trying to hint at without pushing. Because the last thing when you're talking to an elected official, is hear them say, or they're very rarely going to admit, yes, I want to get more funding for my next campaign, or yes, I want to do this because it's going to make me look good. They're going to kind of they're going to put their own spin on it. So what you want to do is then translate that to the domain that makes sense, and understand what the underlying initiative that they care about versus what you say out loud.
Wow. And so when you're dealing with public leaders, private leaders of private companies, or even public companies, let's tie it all together in terms of like embracing these ideas. Why do smart leaders delay like either starting a new initiative or killing an idea that doesn't work? Maybe they're on the fence of calling Charles Sims because, man, it seems like we could do okay with this, or like they almost feel like they just do not want to like blank or get off the pot. And I'm sure you've seen this in all the sectors you work with. Why do they do it, and how do you help them through that?
Honestly, we've had a lot of success just saying, like, it doesn't, like, just that first conversation is almost cathartic. It's like therapy, and very quickly you see these business owners go from, oh, we could never implement AI, or we could never implement this new technology, or this product is not going to be the thing that I'm going to stick my neck out for, to flipping the other way of, oh, I actually believe in it. Like, it's giving them the confidence that they can be passionate about something, giving them the confidence, not another shiny ball. This isn't one of the big four consulting firms that's coming in and creating all of this just noise. It's actually very quick surgical innovation that's executable. So giving them something that they can execute, and that 60, 90-day time frame, not this could be a 3 or 4 year project.
And during that month and a half, how do you help teams separate identity from the initiatives? Because I think it's almost like this old school mentality of like your identity is your career and what have you. But like when you have these initiatives and you have a strong identity, how do you walk those through? Because you still need both, but how do you separate them?
It's a great question, because even one of the things that I've struggled with is separating my identity from the different organizations I'd worked at, because I had such large names on the resume, trying to not just be the tech guy from Clippers, or the tech guy from UTA, or any of the management consulting work that I did, but that identity actually is really valuable. So these initiatives with the leaders and stakeholders involved are, you should own your piece of that, like the identity. You should be able to talk about like what your differentiation is, but it shouldn't be at the expense of the initiative. So it should be in an additive way, in an empowering way. So even if you're the intern who was first helping set up the database for analytics for a basketball team, that's valuable and that's awesome. But that doesn't take precedent to actually getting the stuff set up, to actually getting the things implemented and all that. So like, that's where I like to say, you want to, as a leader, you want to empower your all of your employees with the feeling that they have a voice that matters, that can be said elsewhere, but with the context of not overvaluing that voice just for PR purposes or publicity, but for the betterment and like what their vision and their voice actually means.
Nice. Well, let's wrap this up by circling back to the original point of the 80-20 rule that we were talking about, and the importance of systemizing that 80%. Big takeaway here, Charles. Why is it so important to systemize that big old 80 number?
80% of all business, and I'll say it many, many times, 80% of all businesses are basically the same. The same domains, the same practices, same things that you have to get set up are very, very routine. And what you want to do is get as many of those organizations into that 20. So you can systematize that 80% by following, whether it's your industry best practices, whether it's the templates, like the ways that we've told folks, how do you productize that service side of and that implementation and operational side. And then that 20% becomes your special sauce. That's what is your differentiator. And you're not just another organization out there. You're actually one that is so well built on sturdy foundation that you can pivot, you can move, you can be agile, you can adapt to whatever the world may throw at you.
Great stuff. So Charles, for the people that are like me, they can't spell, they want to find out more about SkaFld Studios, where should they start?
You can find us at SkaFld Studio, SkaFld Studio.com, or on LinkedIn. You can also find me anywhere from LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Charles Sims. I'm there, and we'd love to help you out.
Awesome. Charles, great conversation. I'll see you next time, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Talk soon.
And that'll do it for this episode. If you're an entrepreneur ready to grow your industry recognition as an author and entrepreneur.com contributor, go to authorities.entrepreneur.com.